comes to the second season of BMF, I'm going to be completely honest, I thoroughly enjoyed it for many reasons. First of all, I just really enjoyed seeing how, after what happened in season 1, we're seeing the brothers being independent from each other and actually doing quite well. Even though there's a few hiccups here and there, once the brothers finally reconcile and get back together, that's when we see them really thriving business-wise. But it was very interesting to see when independent, they would use their own street skills that they've learned for the last few years and build up their businesses. For example, we see Terry, when using his skills, how he would somewhat one-up his own customers in his own business he has with his dad. And even though he was getting a lot of threats and to an extent his business was being damaged, he knew how to take care of that, and we're seeing him expand what little of a business he originally had and turn it into something quite big. The same goes for Meech when he decides to take his product and move it to Atlanta, to a distant cousin, and get a new revenue and business set up there, helping out with not only his family but also having a new business to work from. Now when it comes to the antagonist, it's nice to see that Lamar's back, and I think he's a bit better in this one. Whilst he is very hot-headed, at the same time I feel like he's a bit more clever with his attacks. Rather than just going in guns blazing and possibly getting shot like he did in the previous season, he's more taking out people one by one until he can get to Meech, and I found that really intriguing. But it was also nice to see that with his character, he gets a dog that he somewhat believes he and the dog are the same, and you somewhat see this weird relationship between the two. And once the dog gets some bad news and has to be put down, we see a very vulnerable side to Lamar, which is really intriguing. Another great addition was seeing Alvin, who was a small cameo in the first season, played by Darnell Rawlings, is the cousin to Lamar. And we see this very comedic but great relationship between the two. Whilst comedic, towards the end it gets a bit hostile, especially with Lamar and his ruthlessness and somewhat intimidating Alvin, as he is not part of the street business, and we see this relationship somewhat dissolve by the very end. The other antagonists on this show are the police, specifically Detective Bryant, who has a bone to pick with the BMF, as they used to work together, but after murdering a police officer he's definitely turned against them, and he really is hunting down after Meech, and we see that he's using tactics that even Meech probably wouldn't do to incarcerate any BMF member. And it's really sad to see that even the police can't be trusted. If anything, it just shows that when going after a certain criminal, you'll become like that criminal, or to an extent worse. And when looking at it, the only difference between Meech and Detective Bryant is Detective Bryant wears a uniform. So throughout the show we see the theme of cheating go to two particular characters. The first being Terry, the youngest son, who is infatuated with a woman he meets whilst working with his dad, and we see that the relationship goes from infatuation to getting heavily involved with her, and he is actually cheating on the woman he has had a child with and is expecting another child. And on the other side we see Charles Flannery, the father of the boys, cheating on his wife with her best friend. And we see that the way they somewhat elaborate on these relationships, as both aren't in the happiest of relationships, with Terry not particularly in love with the woman he's with at the moment and is only there because of the child, and he is helping her financially, but he has more in common with this other woman and is more attracted to her personality and what have you. And on the other hand we see that Charles, he believes the marriage is somewhat failing and he's trying to get something new, but unlike Terry, he still loves her very much and he really regrets what he had done. Another thing about Charles is we see that even though he still disavows Meech and his business decisions, when the two brothers have to flee Detroit and end up going into Atlanta, he gives them every penny he has, and we still see that he's still very loyal to his family, and even though yes the ethics is there, he still treats them as family, and it's very interesting to see. When it comes to the violence in this show, I still think it's top notch, just as good as the previous season. If anything, I think it's been elevated a little bit more, as well as that the humour in this season is better than the previous season. Whilst I would say Lamar is still as funny and Alvin is a new addition, I also enjoy Snoop Dogg's character, as even he gets funnier moments. Now, when it comes to the last episode, I thoroughly enjoyed it for many reasons. First of all, we see Meech finally get the drop on Lamar, but instead of killing him, even though he has every right to, as not only did he attempt to murder his brother, attempted to murder him, and did murder many of his friends, he takes the lighter option, that being make him a crack addict, and he does this to a lesser extent. He feels pity, or because he believes death is the weaker option. That I found that very interesting and redeeming of that particular character. He could have easily killed him whilst Lamar was in the weakest of states, but he decided not to. It was also interesting we see the brothers separate business-wise, but on good terms, unlike the previous season. And as sad as it is, I do respect Meech for firing B. Mickey, as he could have killed him easily, but instead, as he knows he is a day one and will look out for Meech no matter what, he can't trust him because of his potential snitching and suspiciousness of around being a snitch, and so he has to disavow it. But I still respect him for taking that option over the other one. And I really enjoyed seeing how the brothers, even though they are departing, it seems like they're doing it for the better. And we see Terry's looking happy with this new woman, and Meech going after a new opportunity and seeming somewhat happy in that. But sadly, because of the business they're in and the history they've had in both season 1 and season 2, their history is coming back to them, and it was an amazing cliffhanger. Critiques, I only really have one, and that is with the character Meech, as we see him get shot. And if anything, I feel like after he got shot, the next episode deals with what happens, but after that we don't really see Meech being in pain or having trouble sitting down, as if the shooting never really happened. Now, admittedly, there could have been a time jump that I'm unfamiliar with, and I'll take full responsibility for that. Overall, I really enjoyed this. It was interesting to see the brothers doing their own thing, but then finally coming back together. I enjoyed the comedy of the show, the action, and I enjoyed how we see these brothers. They were able to get on top during a cocaine drought in Atlanta and Detroit, and I cannot wait for season 3. Is it good? I'd say it's amazing. Rating wise, it's definitely an 8.5 out of 10. Now, recommendations, admittedly, they're going to be quite similar to the previous ones I did when reviewing this show. That being Snowfall, as I feel like the characters are quite similar. I would also recommend Power, as again, a lot of similarities, and as well as the spin-offs, both Ghosts, as I feel like we're seeing young'uns getting involved in the drug game as Terry is in the show, and Raising Kanan, as again, also young'uns, but also the smart business tech that both Meech and Kanan's mum, she knows the business, and the fact that it's set in the 90s and early 80s, also that. But last recommendation, but definitely not the least, is always The Wire. A lot of similarities. Alright, those are my recommendations. This has been my review for B.M.F Season 2. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching and have a good day.